Please help me welcome Susan Shelley.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm here to tell you about property taxes and what could happen to them. Now, we're not going to let it happen, so I don't want anyone to give up their breakfast here. It's going to be all right. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to work really hard, and we're going to work together, and we're going to make sure that we continue to protect Proposition 13.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So for anybody who's not familiar with it, if you're new to California or you just don't remember, in 1978, inflation and property values were driving home prices and all property prices in California higher and higher and higher. And the property tax rate, statewide average, was 2.67% of the assessed value. 2.67% of the assessed value. That was the average. In some places, it was higher. Property tax bills were coming in with these new valuations as prices were going up, and people couldn't believe how prices were going up. A $35,000 home was a $70,000 home, was a $150,000 home, and people were getting property tax bills that were literally killing them. There was one woman that dropped dead in the assessor's office when they told her she would have to pay that. Literally. Now, Howard Jarvis was someone who was involved in property. He was with the Apartment Association, and he tried year after year to do something about this. And the legislature just wouldn't. They were so happy that people were paying 2.67% of the market value of their home, and the homes were going up in value, and more money was rolling into Sacramento, and they thought that was fine. So over and over again, they declined to do anything about it, until it got so bad that Howard Jarvis and a stack of petitions and a bunch of other activists got Proposition 13 on the ballot. Now, Proposition 13 capped the statewide tax rate at 1%. So it was a sharp tax cut right there. And most importantly, it capped how much the assessed value could go up. So instead of going up to market value, whatever the market value was, whether you could afford the taxes or not, it could only go up, the assessed value could only go up 2% a year. The cost of living, or 2% a year, no more than that, for as long as you own your property. When it changed ownership, then it could be reassessed to market value again. So this made life really simple. Everybody knew what their property taxes were going to be when they bought a piece of property, and there wasn't this uncertainty. Well, when this qualified for the ballot, Sacramento freaked out. They were very upset. And they said, we have to stop this. How are we going to stop this? Well, they were too late to stop it. They were just too late. But what they did is they scrambled and they passed an alternative measure, which was Proposition 8 on the same ballot. And Proposition 8 would have allowed a split property tax roll. What that means is, instead of taxing all property with the same rate and the same rules, they would divide it into different kinds of categories of property. So commercial property, businesses, could be taxed at a different rate than residential property. And apartment buildings could fall on either side of the ledger depending on how they defined it. The voters rejected Proposition 8, and they passed Proposition 13. It wasn't close. Proposition 8 went down to defeat with something like 45% of the vote, and Prop 13 passed with 65% of the vote. The voters had had enough of their taxes going up out of control. But the politicians never forgave us. They never forgave the voters for taking control. And Proposition 13 is a constitutional amendment, which means if you want to change it, you have to go back to the voters and pass a constitutional amendment to change it. There have been many attempts to do it, and they have all failed. Now, there's two ways to get a constitutional amendment passed in California. It has to go on the ballot, but there's two ways to get it on the ballot. It can either be passed by the legislature with a 2/3 vote of the Assembly and a 2/3 vote of the Senate, then it's on the ballot, then it only needs a simple majority. Or you can get the required number of signatures, which is a percentage of how many people voted in the last election for governor. So that varies from year to year. But if you get the signatures, you can put it on the ballot even if the legislature hates it. So here's what's happening. There have been many attempts to get something on the ballot to create a split roll and tax commercial property at a higher rate. There have been several times that people have tried to just change the rate. None of them have ever made it to the ballot. The closest one was sponsored by the California Teachers Association and actor Rob Reiner, if you remember Rob Reiner, and that was pulled before signatures were collected. That's as close as they've gotten, until now. The California Teachers Association and a number of public employee unions and some groups like the League of Women Voters have qualified a measure that would split the property tax roll. It's called the Schools and Communities First Initiative.
What a nice name.
What a nice name. Yeah, it gets worse. It gets worse. So they qualified this for the 2020 ballot, but they don't like it because it's not polling very well and it has some legal and technical problems, like they've got the wrong date on it. So they've decided to qualify another measure that fixes some of these problems. Now what this would do is they think it raises $12 billion. Another way to look at that is it confiscates $12 billion from businesses and consumers. But it would raise $12 billion and it's split up between local governments and the school districts. We are looking at a situation, I believe, where people are fighting, the thieves are fighting over dividing the loot in a way. The School Board Association wants a different measure that raises the income tax and raises $15 billion for schools. And then there are other proposals to raise taxes and split up the money. Why are they so anxious to raise taxes in California? That's the answer. We already have the highest income tax in California. California has the highest income tax in the nation. And we have the highest state sales tax. And we have either the highest gasoline taxes or an eyelash behind Pennsylvania, depending on how that works out. We have almost the highest corporate tax. The only tax that's not the highest in the country is the property tax, and that's because of Proposition 13, and that's why they're coming after it. So where it stands right now is, the measure that's not quite good enough has already qualified and they have not pulled it off the ballot. They are collecting signatures for this measure, which would be on the November 2020 ballot if it makes it. It needs about 1 million signatures, valid signatures, in order to make the ballot. So if you're driving around or you're in a supermarket and you see tables outside with petition signers, people asking for petition signers, and they've got signs on there that say Protect Prop 13, it doesn't protect Prop 13. And you can go to the Howard Jarvis website for anyone who signed this measure and didn't mean to, thinking it was something else, thinking they were protecting the schools somehow with magical money. They can pull their signature off of this. There's a form that you can fill out and mail it to the Register of Voters in your county, and you can take your signature off a petition that you've signed if you find out that you shouldn't have signed it or didn't mean to. So that's something to know. You can go to hjta.org and click the red flashing light at the top that says find out if you've signed a measure that raises property taxes, and you can pull your signature off of this petition. If they get their 1 million signatures and it gets on the ballot and it passes, heaven forbid, what will happen is every commercial property in California with a value of greater than $3 million, which is all of them, they will all be reassessed to market value. Every business in California, the little stores in the strip malls, the big shopping malls, every hotel, every restaurant, every sports stadium, movie theater, warehouse, factory, office building, every commercial building will be reassessed to market value. And then the property tax bill will be 1% of that every year as a condition of hanging onto the property. And if you can't pay it, you have to sell, or they'll sell it for you. Wow. What's going to happen to prices in California when every supermarket is reassessed, and all these properties with parking lots, these large properties, and they're all reassessed to market value from the maybe 1970s or 1980s or 1990s value under Prop 13. The prices will go up, the hiring will go down. What happens to a factory? What happens to Google and Facebook and Apple with all the property they have in this very expensive area? No matter how long they've owned it, it's worth more today than when they bought it. So what are they doing, do you suppose? Well, they're expanding in other states. They're not saying they're leaving. They're not saying it's Cal exit. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but if this were to pass, all they have to do is turn off the lights and leave. Google has built a $1 billion campus in New York. Facebook is building a $1 billion campus in New York. Everybody's expanding in Texas. It's easy to leave. It's hard to attract businesses to California now because of all the high costs and all the high taxes and the regulatory climate and the legal climate and everything else about this state that makes it so business unfriendly, that it consistently ranks at the bottom of CEO Magazine's rankings of business-friendly climates. We are not doing justice to the people in this state with policies like this because the jobs are going to leave, and all that will be left is people looking for work and packing their U-Hauls and leaving. This is just economic suicide. So, what do you suppose will happen with this? It may not qualify, or under a 2014 law, they can do horse trading and negotiations in Sacramento. When something gets to 25% of the required signatures, there has to be a legislative hearing about it. This is a new law. It's only been in effect since 2014. So when something qualifies, it becomes a poker chip to negotiate with the legislature. Because what's the other way to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot? 2/3 vote of the Assembly, 2/3 vote of the Senate. So here's what's going on. The School Board Association, which wants to raise the income tax to raise money for schools, has asked the governor to talk to the people who are sponsoring the split roll, to ask them to pull it off and do one grand negotiation for one giant tax increase to fund everybody. That could happen. They could pull this off the ballot, and they could all negotiate, and at the very last second, probably in June, they could put something else on the ballot. Now, what would that be? Well, currently, the split roll proposal does not include apartment buildings, but it could. And it could raise taxes not just on the wealthy, but on everybody. And it could include a sales tax on services. It could be anything. It could be anything. It's going to be one of these backroom negotiations with all the power players in Sacramento, and hang on to something because it's going to be fast if they do this, and it'll be passed. It'll be on the ballot, and then we're going to have to really look at it and probably fight it because it will be a massive tax increase. This is really not necessary. You know, there are many policies that California could pursue that would stimulate the economy, be better for businesses, create more revenue on the volume side, because you have more businesses with a lower tax rate, you're going to have more revenue than fewer businesses with a higher tax rate. More people working would be better. There are many ways to address what's wrong with the economy in California. Raising taxes on every business simultaneously, over and over again, not just once, but at least every 3 years, they would all be reassessed to market value. It would be a catastrophe. It would be a catastrophe. And then, if it doesn't raise enough money, then what? Because, as you all know, $12 billion doesn't solve the problem of the unfunded pension liability, particularly if they keep raising all the salaries of government workers and increasing the pension obligations and hiring more people and increasing the pension obligations. It's insatiable. It's unending. That's when they have to come for the homeowners. So my guess would be that it would be in tiers, that they would probably come after the homeowners of the largest, most expensive homes first, and then they would amend the Constitution for a little bigger bite and a little bigger bite. This is a catastrophe in the making. If we allow Proposition 13 to be hacked to pieces, there will soon be nobody left to fight for anybody. And then we're back where we were before 1978, where the market goes up, the taxes go up, and if you can't pay it, you are taxed out of your property. And when you look at the wider picture, property taxes are not like other taxes. Income tax is once on the way in, sales tax is once on the way out, capital gains tax when you decide to sell. Property tax, every year, as a condition of keeping what you already own. This is very different. This is very different. And when the government comes for your property, because they want to give the money to somebody else, they want to give it in salaries or in benefits or in whatever, they're coming for your property to give your money to somebody else, they are taking your freedom. They are taking a portion of your life when they take your home this way. And we must fight for freedom, and we must fight to control taxation in California. And we must fight for the power of the initiative, the legitimate power of the initiative, not the backroom horse trading power, the legitimate power of the people of California to control government in this state. And this is the fight. This is the line in the sand. No further. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association will be leading this fight. You can count on it. There's, of course, a huge coalition of business owners, business property groups, all kinds of business advocacy groups that are involved in this. I believe it's called the Coalition of Californians Against Higher Property Taxes. That's the committee of people that are fighting this split roll. But you can join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, be a member, strengthen this organization. We will be rallying the grassroots. We will be fighting this proposal. We will be fighting against all these tax increases. For example, there's a tax increase in LA County for any city in LA County that uses the LA County Fire Department. Not the ones that have their own city fire department like Los Angeles, but any city that has a county fire department that uses the county fire department. And this will be a parcel tax. It's a property tax. It's going to be on the March ballot. It's 6 cents per square foot of building. So it's $60 for every 1,000 square feet of every home and business. And what's it for? Well, it's for replacing equipment for the fire department. Did they not know that they were going to have to increase, replace, upgrade? Did they not know how old their fire engines were? It's called budgeting. This is the budget game. This is how it works. You know, we got involved in this, and former supervisor Mike Antonovich has also signed the argument against it, and I have yard signs. And what they've done, property tax revenue to the county is going up every year as property values go up and properties turn over. So we looked up the numbers. Supervisor Antonovich put me in touch with his former chief of staff, and we looked up the numbers together online, pie charts on the county CEO's office website. And here's roughly what the numbers are. Locally generated property taxes 4 years ago, about $5 billion, then $5.3 billion, then $5.6 billion, and currently $6 billion. It's going up every year. Why didn't they fund the fire department? So you look at their argument that's going to be in the ballot, that they have all these needs. Well, where was this list of needs at budget time when they were paying for everything else? I looked at the budget press release that came out in April last year. And here are a few of the things that they funded ahead of paramedics, ahead of the fire department. They funded $36 million for consultant studies of office space. That's important. And they funded refinements at the Music Center Plaza. I have nothing against the Music Center Plaza. Refinements ahead of ambulances, ahead of paramedics? Really? And they funded a new Department of Arts and Culture with 32 new bureaucratic positions and pensions and benefits. Now, we used to have commissioners for the arts and culture. This is a new system. This is a formal government department for the first time ever in Los Angeles. You get the picture. They have money for everything they want to do, for every pet project, for everything that they can put in the press release and say, look what I've done. But when it comes to the top government priorities, they come to the taxpayers and they say, we don't have enough money, and you're all going to die of a heart attack if you don't pass this tax. And no one will come and pick you up and take you to the hospital because you didn't pay this $60 per 1,000 square feet on top of another fire department special tax, which is already being collected and has been since the 1990s and goes up every year and is currently about $70 for every single family residence. So there are the ordinary property taxes, the special tax for the fire department. None of that's enough. They want one more. Well, that's a game. And the reason that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is fighting it is because this game is going on everywhere. This is on every ballot. Every sales tax increase that's being proposed, well, it's for 911 service. You don't want to be without 911 service, do you? And then what they're telling you, this is a principle that one journalist once called, fire the fireman first. The fire the fireman first principle of budgeting. The idea is that when someone says, well, you should cut the waste and fraud out of the budget, they fire the fireman. And they say, well, there is no waste and fraud. If we have to cut the budget, we have to cut the paramedic service. That's all we can cut. That's the only waste in the budget. It's a game. It's a game. And we have to call them on it. Because taxes are too high and people are squeezed in this state and they're leaving this state. We're about to lose a congressional representative for the first time in the history of California. Did you know that? The census says that our population has declined relative to the other states. Texas is going to pick up probably 3 representatives in Congress, and we are going to lose 1 for the first time ever. Ever. In the whole history of California, we have never declined in population. And it's happening. Why is it happening? Because we don't have a Berlin Wall that forces people to stay. And if they want to go to another state that has lower income taxes, they have 49 other choices. You can't miss. You go anywhere in the United States, your income taxes are lower than California. Your state sales taxes are lower than California. Your gas taxes will be lower than California. And then all the other costs, the hidden taxes.
Your housing is cheaper.
And your housing is cheaper. And one reason that housing is so expensive is a whole series of policies that makes it impossible to build in outlying areas. We don't have to get into that, but you know these issues better than I do. We could be building more housing where people would choose to buy it. We could let the market build housing. Instead, we have policies that are forcing a type of housing on people that the communities don't necessarily want, the buyers don't necessarily want. Only the developers want it. And the developers are not the only vote that matters. So we have a lot of work to do in this state. But first, we have to protect Proposition 13. That's the line in the sand. And I'm happy to take any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Understand some numbers on the split level tax,
Yes.
and I added it up based on supermarket. I estimated some value on it, compared what current taxes are and what the new taxes would be. It comes out to 42 cents per every $3 we spend that we're going to pay, that they have to raise the price on.
I don't doubt that for a minute. If you want to see on your own property what your taxes would look like if we had never passed Prop 13, go to hjta.org and click the button that says See Your Shocking Tax Bill. See your shocking tax bill if we ever lost Proposition 13. And you can show this to people, you can show this to your clients. If they say, I don't understand why Proposition 13 matters, I heard it's bad for the schools. It's not bad for the schools. It's protecting people's homes. Yes?
Yeah. A friend of mine recently fell down in the theater, and the theater, not him, called the paramedics. He wasn't really injured, but they thought it was safe to call the paramedics. Paramedics came, took him to the hospital, spent a couple hours getting tests there, and everything was fine, no injury. 2 weeks later, he got a bill from the paramedics for $1,600.
Oh,
Now, do they need more money?
it's a game. It's just a game. And many of these things are intended to alert people to the fact that there are high costs. There's another factor that's involved, and that's been the explosion of homeless encampments. Because what's really happened to the fire department is they've had more medical calls than fire calls. You know, it's not that there's been an increase in fires, there's been an increase in 911 calls for medical service, and much of it, I'm told, is related to this explosion of people living on the streets and heroin and meth and all the rest of it. And this is a crisis separate from the budget, separate from the fire department. This is a crisis all its own. Yes?
Yeah, so if the taxes are capped at 1%, how is it that every election cycle, we have a new tax that circumvents that? And it was HHH.
Right.
I mean, Go down the list.
Okay, so the question is, if the taxes are capped at 1%, why are there always these additional taxes? And the answer is that 1% is the cap on the general tax based on the assessed value. And then the voters have the power under Prop 13 to pass other taxes for specific things. If the government wants to put a general tax for any general purpose on the ballot, that can pass with 50% of the vote plus one, simple majority. If it's separate, it has to be on the ballot, voters have to approve it, but it can pass with a simple majority. If it's for a special purpose, in other words, if they come to you and they say, well, this is only for the fire department, or only for the schools, or only for this or that, in other words, something that they think will test well and be popular, that takes a 2/3 vote. So this fire department tax, which is Measure FD for fire department, that will take a 2/3 vote. If the voters approve it, it will be on the property tax bills. If the voters approve bonds, then there's an extra charge. Local bonds are on the property tax bill. General obligation bonds from the state are not, that's out of the general fund, but local property taxes. For instance, in the year 2000, there was an amendment to the Constitution, Proposition 39, which changed the threshold for passing local bonds for schools from 2/3 to 55%. And since then, many more of them have passed. And Sacramento would like to change that threshold for many other kinds of local bonds. A proposal ACA 1, Assembly Constitutional Amendment 1, would make it 55% for infrastructure bonds. What's infrastructure? What isn't? What isn't infrastructure? Everything they build is infrastructure. They pour concrete is infrastructure. So those would pass with 55%. Now, so far we've been able to stop that in Sacramento, in the Assembly. That came to a vote in August. They needed 54 votes to advance it. They only had 44 votes. So that was a victory for taxpayers, and that's in the Taxing Times, that's circulating in a little newspaper there, the story of that, and how our great lobbyist David Wolf fought every one of those lawmakers to a draw until they either voted no or stayed off of it, and they only had 44 votes to pass that. They could still try again this year. They had reconsideration approved, and they could try it once again. So watch for that, Assembly Constitutional Amendment 1. If you see that it's scheduled for a vote, call your assembly member and say, vote no on that. Because, you know, as you say, when these pass, every year, every election, there's another one of them, and the taxes go up and up and up. So we have to keep these caps. We have to keep these protections for taxpayers in California. Enough already. So we go to the next one.
Sorry, I have to adjust this. I'm a little taller than Susan. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. Whoever said nice haircut. I appreciate that. Are we going to let split roll happen?
No.
Try that again. Are we going to let split roll happen?
No.
Thank you. Should... Not time for questions quite yet. Should property tax work for everyone?
Yes.
Do I have to ask twice every time? Should property tax work for everyone?
Yes.
Should that include our seniors?
Yes.
Absolutely. So my president's message, of course, we have one potential ballot issue coming up with split roll. CAR has a ballot initiative that we are gathering signatures for at the moment. So I'm asking for your help, which is why I'm trying to get you energized so you don't fall asleep when I do the PowerPoint. I told my wife I was preparing a PowerPoint for this morning. She said, why are you inflicting that on them? So I apologize in advance. And if you don't like it, Mrs. B is on your side. I should have a clicker for... Or I can point. So while Christine prepares that, and we're on slide 2 already, technical issues, so please bear with me. But yeah, CAR is in the signature gathering process for the Family Home Protection and Fairness in Property Tax Act. This you may be a little more familiar with when I described it as Prop 5 Mark II. If you remember, we qualified for the ballot in 2018, an initiative that was to allow portability in property tax for our seniors. We already have that to a degree in California. You can transfer, if you're over 55, there's transfers within your county or within participating counties across California. What we're aiming to do with this is allow portability for our seniors anywhere in California. Also, under the current system, you have to buy something of equal or lower value. You guys are real estate professionals. I'm actually telling you something you most likely already know. With the initiative, you would be able to buy up as well. So if you sold in a less expensive area in California to move, for example, to be near family in a more expensive area, you would keep your property tax basis for the less, for your sales price on the home that you've sold. You would only be reassessed on the difference on the price and the property that you purchased. Absolutely, that's fair. That's why we have fairness in the title. And for once, it's one of these things where the title actually does what it says, rather than these schools and being nice to everyone and all that sort of thing that the split roll initiative is. So we're on, what does the Act do? There's property tax portability. There are some tweaks to Proposition 5. We're not rerunning exactly the same thing because we did hit a lot of opposition, especially from the unions, from the teachers, from the firefighters, from various other groups as well. So we've tried to work with that. We would be insane if we just kept plowing along and doing the same thing over and over again. You have to learn from experience. So there is a limit to 3 times. That's a change from Proposition 5. Believe it or not, there was an argument going around that we would end up with a class of senior home flippers, 80-year-olds wielding sledgehammers, demolishing kitchens, as they flipped and flipped and flipped properties. So limit to 3 times, that allows you to move, but also if your circumstances change, if your family circumstances change, there's a degree of flexibility there. There is an extension from Proposition 5, which is this will be available to property owners in disaster areas. We, in California, have had some incredibly serious fires in the last couple of years. Again, you guys are aware of it. For those of us who go to the CAR conferences, we usually get an update from the local AOR, EO at Paradise. Because the news cameras have left. That fire was 2 years ago, I believe. It's not in the news cycle anymore. They are rebuilding, and when I say they're rebuilding fundamental infrastructure like sewers and gas lines, not throwing up buildings at this stage because everything went. There are property owners who may not want to go back to that community. So with an extension to those in disaster areas, they don't get penalized in property tax if they feel that they have to move to another area. There's also an opt-in. It was rare, but there were a couple of occasions because it was an automatic transfer under Prop 5. There were some rare circumstances where that would actually not be beneficial. We've learned from that. We've changed that. The next bullet point, intergenerational transfer reform. Now, this is the bit that I know is contentious with some people in the room. We have to pay for this. One of the reasons we had a ton of opposition with Proposition 5 was there was a legislative analyst report that basically said, this is going to cost. It's going to cost big. That is the very quick summary. That's why the teachers came out against it. That's why the firefighters came out against it. We knew that wasn't the whole story, but we have to get this through. Currently under intergenerational transfer there, you have there are some dollar limits on it, but you transfer the property tax basis if you transfer to your offspring for your home or income properties. Intergenerational transfers are already in the crosshairs of legislature. There is another LAO report that says this costs the state billions of dollars. Under Proposition 5, we would lose the transfer of income property exemption and the transfer of the primary property if the heir didn't reside in that primary property. It keeps the exemption if the heir does reside in the primary property. If your family passes a property to you and you're going to live in it, that is still your family home and you should keep that property tax exemption. That is protected in this. But we have to pay for the property tax transfer, which is why the others are used to pay for that. And as I say, the legislature know about this exemption. They've seen the LAO report. If we don't use it to pay for something we want, someone else will use it to pay for something they want. It will go to protecting the wading birds of Sacramento River, or paying for a couple of feet of a rail line to nowhere, or whichever project someone manages to come up with and think that they need funding for. It's not something we're giving up lightly. There is a trade here. There's also corporate transfer property reassessment. I believe you guys heard me talk about this when I came back from CAR and NAR in the fall. But corporations are getting around property tax reassessments by, rather than selling their property, they sell the corporation. So it's a shenanigans law that will help, again, pay for seniors being able to move where seniors need to move, freeing up homes for families when those seniors sell as well. There's benefits up and down the scale. We're gathering signatures, just like the split roll people are gathering signatures, except this one's actually beneficial, guys. We need your help. And I see formatting issues with my last slide. I'm sorry about that. We need your help. CAR has already started gathering signatures. We need over 1 million valid signatures. What that, in reality, when you're signature gathering, that means you need 1.5 million. Because those signatures are audited and they kick a bunch off because the addresses are wrong, because it's not a registered voter, because there are other issues with the signature. So you need to over-collect to get the number of signatures that you need. I need your help. I need your help to collect signatures. You can order a packet from CAR, and it's a signature collection packet. It looks very much like this. This petition, and Susie, you've got one as well already, haven't you? And I think one or two others of us have managed to order their packet as ready. You go to www.cargrassroots2020.com and put that password in. This is going out on Facebook. This is protected so that opponents to the measure can't get access to this website. So you put this password in, I believe, and if you can't get in there, you can email and they will send you the password as well. On that website, you'll be able to order your signature packet. You need to get registered voters. There are instructions as well on how the signatures need to be gathered. It's a very meticulous process. You can get your packet, you can go to your friends, you can go to your relatives. Hell, you can go to your clients. Do you have clients you need to call? You haven't spoken to in a little while? And you want to present yourself as the real estate professional who is on top of everything going on in your market and on top of everything that's going to benefit them or their parents or them when they become seniors themselves. This is a great opportunity to say, hey, we have a ballot initiative. The realtors are fighting for you. I'm fighting for you as your realtor. Can I come around and sign it? And have you sign it? Wonderful opportunity. So please go to that website, order your packet. It's one of the few times during our breakfast meeting that I'm going to tell you to actually get your phone out. Usually we're telling you to put it away. I have my packet here, so if you want to sign the petition, come and sign mine, or you can sign Susie's. Sign mine. And one thing to note, some of us are weird and foreign and non-citizens and can't vote. You have to be a registered voter to sign the petition. However, the weird foreigner non-citizen who can't vote can collect signatures. You only have to be over 18 to collect. So if you're in the same boat as me, you might not be able to sign the petition, but you can get a whole bunch of other people to sign it too. So you can participate in that way as well. And if you do have the right to vote, as Bob said at the very beginning of the meeting, for goodness sake, register to vote, because when we qualify for this, we're going to need your vote too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your help. If you have any questions, come up and ask me again.